There was a comforting outcome of the 10-day investigative public hearing by a panel set up by the Ministry of Interior. The outcome is that the ministry is willing to confront issues in Nigeria's correctional services without any effort to cover any failures. The second is that the investigative panel is not on a witch hunt, punitive voyage, or indictment, but is striving to understand the issues, the infractions, why they happen, and how to prevent them, and institute a new correctional culture.
The Nigerian Correctional Service have also seen this process as something that is going to be for their benefits, and they cooperated so well in dealing with all the issues that were raised. They mobilized staff from all over the country to come in and state their own cases as it is. So for us, I think is the trust that the service and even Nigerians have in this process that is quite encouraging to us.
Three major institutions came up again and again in the course of the 10-day public hearing: the police, the judiciary, and the correctional service. The practices by officers of these institutions came up for scrutiny in the investigation, arraignment, detention, and inhumane custodial conditions of inmates.
The issue of underage. That's when a warrant has been sent to the prison officials, and they observe that the person committed in the warrant to be remanded, their opinions on the age, and by the provision of the Act, they have every right to reject it. So, in an attempt to solve or resolve this kind of problem, we should have cognizance to the fact that once a judge, either in the magistrate or high court, has issued a warrant for the remand of a suspect before he has become an order of the court. Being an order of the court, therefore, he must have relied based on the information supplied. If it's a matter under magistracy, I believe the police, since they are here, they have to take note of this because they have more important role to play than the judiciary in this aspect. So what I'm saying in essence is that the police have a very important role to play in preparing their first information report that they normally present to the FIR, to the magistrate court. Because the magistrate will now believe in the information content, and maybe if the accused denies the allegation, he may order his committal on remand, pending when they will bring their own cases. So once the warrant has been given to the officers on their own, to say they have rejected or they will reject him on the grounds of underage, will definitely annoy the court. For any officer to attempt going back to the court to tell the judge, this guy is underage, because he is not in position to do that.
Nigerian Police Force, NDLE, Justice, you are us. They are all under you because you take care of judiciary and everybody. You need to understand what we are going through, keeping these students. They don't call them inmates, we call them students. I learned that on the field last week. Keeping these students in our correctional center. Maybe when we understand it, it will help us to go back to our various agencies to say, look, we need to rejig what we are doing because we are actually causing a lot of discomfort, not just to the correctional service, but also to those students.
Fingers pointed at the magistrate court in the detention of underage raised issues of whether the police and the courts were conscious of the rules governing juveniles who find themselves against the law. Was the National Judicial Institute, which provides training, doing enough to equip judges, and is the training of magistrates from where many are thrown into correctional centers adequate enough?
The mandate of the National Judicial Institute is to train judges and their support staff. So where we come in here is to help develop specialized training programs to equip, as you mentioned, magistrates and legal practitioners with the knowledge needed to identify and prevent human rights violations in detention facilities.
The public hearing was not all about inmates of correction centers or the process of them getting there. The correctional officers also had issues with the system. This ranged from abuse of power by senior officers of the service to mistreatment and denial of rights of the correctional officers. For instance, Diligent correctional service officers found themselves in the bad books of their seniors for doing the right thing.
Now I will start. This is the initial complaint letter, which was dated 22/5/2018. I have submitted to the authorities since 2018. So on March 2018, 40,000 naira was deducted from my salary account for the month of March, April, and May. After complaining to them, 1,000 naira was also deducted for the month of August, September, and October. I complained about the deductions. He said I should hold on, I will look into the issue. So after looking into the issues, I was vindicated. 100,000 naira was returned to me on installments, because the deduction was installment, because 225,000 was taken out of my salary without my consent. So when I wrote this letter and the panel was set up, 100,000 was returned to me. That was when I received a menacing call from Abuja, from that Mr. Teslim Adedoja, who works with the then Prison Microfinance Bank, Lagos. He told me that they will pay me. He said they will pay me, but I will spend the money on transfers. That they will invite me to Abuja. I said, if you are inviting me to Abuja, send me transportation. I will come. That was the menacing call I received from him. I never took all these things so serious. If not, I would have recorded those things. By March 2019, as a result of this microfinance issue, I was transferred to Zone H Makurdi from Lagos with a radio message. I've not even spent up to 2 years at the zonal headquarters Lagos. From there, subsequent transfers started coming up. And the distance is much. I have not committed an offense. I have not done anything against correctional. Somebody will explain to me the next thing, I'll just see my name on transfer. Just like that. I agree that transfer is part of the service. You know, it's part of the job, and it's specified in the public service rule and the conditions of transfer. But when transfer is frequent and does not adhere to the public service rules and regulation, it amounts to witch hunting. So that is why I came here, so that all the issues, my issues will be looked into and addressed, and I need to be relocated back to my family, and money is to be paid to me on all those transfers. Because I'm just tired. I don't know. I'm just tired.
And how does an officer handle a situation in which his superior, against all rules, treats an inmate as a king, rendering him services, providing aids, and giving him special privileges?
On the 23rd of February, this IDRO by name Efine Waimo was taken to hospital. And for the very first time, I have never seen in the practice that a non-custodial staff will be deployed from the headquarters, and alongside 2 staffs, the orderly and the personal assistants, that is orderly and the driver, also accompanying this IDRO. And 4 armed squads were drafted in. They took a white Hilux van that was provided for the state government, took this IDRO to an hospital. I noticed something was wrong, but I couldn't figure it out as in charge discipline. But there is something that I really suspected, because there was no medical officer that actually accompanied them. These persons left the custodial center, and as usual, they have been going and coming back. We thought it would be on the usual basis that he goes and comes back. But that day, he left and never came back. That was the tension. He left by 8 o'clock.
This particular case, I issued a query to my officer in charge on why an inmate who is an IDRO should be taken to the hospital without informing the controller. And the officer in charge replied the query, and immediately after that, I quickly went into investigation. I called the inmate. I asked when they brought him to the yard. I asked where he was taken to. He said he was taken to the hospital, Federal Medical Center. I was not fully impressed, I still went to Federal Medical Center to find out from the doctor. And the doctor said, yes, he wrote that medical report, which he gave to the officer in charge to send to me when I was carrying out my investigation.
The welfare of the correctional officers was another issue that featured in the 10 days public hearing. How does the service justify the retirement of officers on the account of one of them, on the same rank, being appointed the Comptroller General of the service, and in the same breath, retaining some officers on a higher rank than the officers so appointed?
Our entitlement as Assistant Comptroller General retired were not given some of our entitlement were not given to us. But the panel listened to it and asked the service to address that. Two, we have our something like repatriation allowance, but the one that concerns us most was the spirit of disengagement. If it is as a result of the appointment of our junior to become the Comptroller General, while we as seniors should go, which has never happened in the service, why then do you have to stop our salary immediately? We have worked into half of the month, as if a personal vendetta is being expressed. We joined the service with the hope to retire peacefully, and we guided our career. How suddenly will you ask somebody to go, having wives, children, in higher institutions without any benefit?
The emotions which this issue raised were calmed by the chairperson of the investigative panel, Dr. Madeleine Ajani, who is also the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Interior. Like a Daniel, she came to judgment, assuring complainants of fairness and justice, and insisting that the correctional service must operate within its own rules and regulations.
What needs to be done needs to be done. Your repatriation fee has to be paid. So when they give us all the information of the things that they will not pay, if I must tell you, apart from 7 of you, there are other cases of retirees that have not received their cards. I read these letters when they come in, appeals, and we send it to the board because it is their jurisdiction to handle those cases. Okay, so aside from the 7 of you, there are other retirees that correctional service has not paid. But your own case is being looked at now. And there's no way where an officer will retire and 5 years after you've not been paid your repatriation allowance. Repatriation allowance, as you retire and you put in the application, we get it paid. It's not just Ministry of Interior, it's something that the federal service holds very dearly. Because it's just unfair for us to render 35 years of service, then your small chickily money to go back, even if you are not living in Abuja. It's something for you to start off with before your pension comes. And there's no reason why the service should deny you of it. It's your right. So please, whatever it is that we communicate to them to do, I promise you that we'll communicate it to you.
The responsibility of the correctional service to provide adequate feeding, and in some cases specialized feeding, was another issue of concern to the panel. As much as the feeding allowance for inmates has recently been increased, the increase was still inadequate, and the special needs of diabetic and other inmates needing special care are yet not factored in the feeding arrangements.
The panel went to some custodial centers. In all of the ones we went to, there was none which saw food up to 1 week. Not one. So the issue about having a store that's supposed to have at least 7 days thing, it's a practice that's difficult for this to be now implemented. You know that when an inmate is not given food, what danger that is. So if people, first, the amount that is provided is poor. Second, this process of profit making worsens the process. And secondly, You know that the officer in charge used to be one of that level of checks and balances for the contractors when the contractors were totally supplying food. So this is about being open to know where the problems are, to solve our problem, because many inmates are dying because of lack of food. I've never seen what we see these days. There have always been problems, but it has never been the way it is. Never. So as a people, we have to look at this square in the eye. So they're going to show you what is happening in the correctional centers these days. What is happening is inmates are not eating well. There's a lot of commercialization because everybody is now selling what you never used to see. Trying to cope. Those who can't afford to cope are dying. So we will look at what can be done to help, and that's where, before we go there, because it's obvious there are not adequate checks and balances, it's obvious. It has to happen.
The panel wondered if the correctional centers were institutions where the state gets its pound of flesh from inmates, or where inmates are corrected and given a second chance. This arose when the matter of training and rehabilitation was interrogated. It emerged that whereas the correction centers are supposed to be correctional institutions, equipment for preparing the inmates for return to society are either not available or are obsolete and dilapidated.
Doing this, there are three major points. One is that the correctional centers do have the manpower in terms of the inmates. Two, some of these inmates are even knowledgeable in some of these things, repairs. Three, the Nigerian Correctional Service Act had also spoken about the way part of the resources, the profit from the industries, should be divided into three. One part is what will be used to sustain that process, that enterprise. One part is to be given to the inmates as an incentive, those inmates that are there, so that they can continue to learn skill. Another part to go back to the custodial center. So if this is done, that part that is supposed to be sustained can actually help. I gave you an example of one place we went to, a workshop. The whole, we have a picture of it. The whole workshop is roof off. The carpentry workshop is on this side. Then you have shoemaking and all that. So the question here is about how you can turn this around in relation to maintenance culture, skills acquisition and training for inmates, and utilizing what you have. This is not about contracts. I'm talking about, this is having the culture of maintenance.
Not only about maintenance culture, even though that is very, very important. Resourcefulness. There were things we observed in some facilities we visited. They have large number, over 1,000. But where they have for workshop or school is smaller than half of this building. Not even smaller, about a quarter of this building. And then when we were asking, they said there's no space. But we've been to other facilities like Nigerian, where they even had to put canopies outside for the people to school. But there was a big church, we were saying, there could have been a makeshift arrangement that when the church is not in session, they can be able to use it at school. And I know those in your department can be able to build, even if it's demarcators, to ensure that those essential services are delivered innovatively within the space you have until money is available for you to build what you need to build.
As the investigative panel rounded up its 10-day sitting, there appeared to be silver lining in the horizon. There is a willingness to make the service to improve its operation and exit Nigeria for being the butt of every report on failure in correctional service delivery.